Star Trek was missing an important part of the USS Enterprise early in Season 1. Mr. Sulu George Takei nearly died early in Star Trek, the original series Season 1, because the USS Enterprise was missing something important. Although Star Trek launched on NBC in 1966 with Captain James T. Kirk William Shatner in command of the Starship Enterprise's 5-year mission of exploration, much of Star Trek was still a work in progress. From Mr. Spock Leonard Nimoy calling himself Second Officer to the United Federation of Planets yet to be created, early Star Trek was still figuring it out as it went along. The Starship Enterprise didn't send down a shuttlecraft to rescue Mr. Sulu and the other frozen officers in The Enemy Within, because Star Trek lacked a shuttlecraft set at that early point in the series run. A shuttlecraft as an option to save Sulu is never discussed in The Enemy Within, and the officers in jeopardy on the planet below were a ticking clock plot point in the Star Trek episode. Sulu's only salvation was for the Enterprise's transporters to be cleared of the danger of duplicating Sulu like it did Captain Kirk. Even though Sulu was dying on Alpha 177, Captain Kirk, Spock, and Dr. Leonard McCoy DeForest Kelley were primarily concerned with the damage the evil Kirk was doing aboard the Enterprise, including sexually assaulting Yeoman Janice Rand Grace Lee Whitney. When the two Kirks were finally merged by the repaired transporters, Sulu and his colleagues were finally beamed aboard the Enterprise. A shuttlecraft would have solved this dilemma instantly, but Star Trek simply didn't have one yet. Now that Star Trek finally had a shuttlecraft, the Galileo 7 was designed to show it off. When Spock is in command of the shuttlecraft, which is stranded on a planetoid of hostile aliens, the Vulcan science officer's authority and reliance on logic are repeatedly questioned by his crew. The shuttlecraft Galileo also led to the Starship Enterprise gaining an impressive hangar base set used throughout Star Trek, the original series. Star Trek Prodigy revealed a surprising fate for the shuttlecraft Galileo. Star Trek Prodigy Season 1's classic Episode 13, All the World's a Stage, revealed a surprising fate for the shuttlecraft Galileo. Darrell Brett Gray and the young crew of the USS Protostar discovered Ensign David Garovic, voiced by Fred Tatasciore of the USS Enterprise, crash-landed the Galileo on a pre-warp planet over a century before. The inhabitants of the planet modeled their society after Sun and the records of the Starship Enterprise, naming themselves the Enderprizians. When Star Trek, the original series, first hit television screens in 1966, it boldly introduced audiences to the iconic USS Enterprise. But sharp-eyed fans noticed something was strangely absent in the early episodes of Season 1, the ship's engine room, or at least, a proper version of it. While viewers were introduced to the bridge, sickbay, transporter room, and even the ship's corridors almost immediately, the all-important engineering section of the Enterprise was conspicuously missing. This omission created a narrative and visual gap in the early stories, especially since the ship's propulsion system, the warp drive, was often central to the plot. In those early days, Star Trek was operating on a limited budget, and the production team had to get creative with their sets. The original series was pioneering in its design, but cost constraints meant many rooms aboard the Enterprise were either reused or hastily redressed versions of other sets. Engineering was one of the last sections to be fully realized, first making a real appearance with a distinct visual identity in the episode The Naked Time, which aired later in Season 1. Before then, any scenes set in or around the ship's engines were often shot in generic spaces that didn't sell the scale or complexity of the ship's power systems. This left Scotty, the ship's chief engineer, without a signature space to command. His pivotal role wasn't fully emphasized until engineering itself became a character, complete with flashing lights, catwalks, and that unforgettable warp core hum. Once the engine room became part of the show's regular set rotation, it grounded the technical realism of the Enterprise. It gave Scotty a home, added dramatic tension for warp speed emergencies, and helped reinforce Gene Roddenberry's vision of a working, functional starship. In retrospect, the absence of engineering in the earliest episodes shows just how much Star Trek evolved, even in its first,